I'm Ann Kim, and I went to Botswana in spring 2011.
And I'm Jill Braden Balderas, and I went to Uganda.
I started working at the local PBS station in Boston, and I actually wasn't working in documentary. I actually started at Antiques Roadshow and then moved to children's television. And then from there I really started getting into documentaries and had the opportunity to work on a few different programs looking at health in the United States as well as abroad. So that's really how I got my start, but it was through that entree into the local PBS station.
My first job was at a local cable TV station here in Washington, D.C. that's actually not even around anymore. But it was really great because I started as a producer with very little experience. And because we were always so short-staffed, I got to do pretty much anything and everything. As a producer, I got to report, I got to do live shots, studio work, back timing, pretty much everything you needed to learn as far as broadcast. I was able to do that at a really small shop and sort of hone my skills there.
Television actually is a great training ground to learn both the visual medium and audio. And so having worked, but it also really, I think, to do it well requires collaboration. So that's hence the reason of having a crew, having a camera person, having an audio person. I think in scenarios where you don't have the funding to do that, which is often the case with independent documentary, if you want to get it done, you're just going to have to do it yourself, which is great training, but it is a lot of work. And I think in the same way, I mean, this to me was an opportunity to try building on those skills, but sort of honing them a little bit more. So, I was really interested in, well, not just in using the physical skills, but also how that affects how you think about the story. So for instance, with doing radio reporting, you're really creating picture with sound. And so it's not just a matter of getting room tone, which, I'm always trying to remind myself to do in the field when you're shooting video, but it's also getting lots of different kinds of sounds so that you can actually layer those sounds together to create a picture or a setting that way. And so I think it's an exercise both in the technical skill, but also in terms of how you think about constructing a story.
This fellowship for me was an opportunity to do radio field reporting. I have done radio in the past, but it's always been in studio, or phone interviews. I had never actually gone out in the field and had to, as Anne explained, get all the sounds that you need in order to build your story and to layer your story. And I was constantly thinking in my mind about stories that I have heard on radio that I really liked and really helped me kind of place where the story is. So I think because I was so focused on getting the audio that I put the video and the pictures on the back burner. I hope that if I continue going forward in the radio medium, that I will, once I get more comfortable with that I will be able to try and venture out into some of the video world and more pictures. I did take some pictures, but not nearly as many as I would like to have. So I do think that it is quite challenging to try and report in all of those different mediums and do it well. And I wanted to make sure that I did my radio stories well and that everything else was sort of secondary. And Anne also mentioned collaboration and working with a crew, and I will say that that is one thing that I really missed on this trip, because in my prior experiences working with a videographer, it is so helpful to have someone else who is registering the same information but might be seeing it differently and might suggest other questions to ask. If I'm the reporter asking questions, I've had cameramen several times say, well, what about this? Or they'll just pipe in with another question, and it really adds something else to the story. And then you can talk about, this is what I saw, what did you see? And if you really have that back and forth, I think it helps formulate the story better. And that just obviously is not possible if it's just you and your equipment and you're trying to absorb everything that's going on and reporting the story.
There's an increasing expectation that producers will also learn how to shoot a little bit and edit a little bit. And in fact, a friend of mine just emailed me today asking where she could go take a Final Cut Pro class or what kind of HD camera to buy. And she's been a producer for a very long time, so now she's sort of being thrown in to learn these things, which I think it's great to learn those skills. I think it's that will never, I think, be as rich as collaborating with people. And I think what you're going to see is there's going to be some faltering in the quality of reporting if that's the only way that we're going to do it. The challenge in this case of doing international reporting is that you're going off to this country where there might not have even been a reporter from the United States going in X amount of time. And so there's, I found myself wanting to get a little, like some visual stuff, some still images, some video, some audio, but really in the end, I think the way it worked out for me was to really focus in on a few stories and pick a medium that I was going to do it in. So if it was going to be, for instance, the infant circumcision piece, that's going to be a radio piece. And maybe there will be a few images to go with it, but really it's going to be a radio piece. There's another one that I envisioned to be more of a slideshow, so I went with some audio. I had, there was time to kind of do a really nice sit-down interview, and then time to follow this woman at her cattle post to be able to take some images. So, the field process allowed for some of that, but if it were a different kind of story, it might not have been as possible. So, they say there's no story without good audio. So if you don't have that, then at least if you want to do a video type thing or a slideshow type thing, you have to have something to build it on. So.
And one other thing too, just to add to that, is even though, as I said, I was focusing on the radio piece, I did have in the back of my mind, actually really frankly it was in the forefront of my mind, this story will live on the web. So even though I did not take a lot of pictures, I did try and take enough to illustrate the story once it actually is online. Because that is the reality that, whether it's a broadcast piece on TV or whether it's a broadcast piece on radio, they will all get posted online somewhere. So having that visual element, at least in a still photograph, it was important enough to me that I still did take pictures.